Well, thank you for having us for our interview today. We wanted to start off by just asking you a little bit about yourself, like what you do for work and general information.
Well, thank you for interviewing me today. My name is Michael Mallert. I'm the Executive Vice President of Hometown Bank. Hometown is a $400 million community bank located in Oxford, Mass. We have 8 branches throughout Worcester County, which includes Athol, Leominster, South Lancaster, and then down into Webster, Oxford, Sturbridge, and Auburn. We currently have right now 87 employees, of which roughly 30 of those employees are on the lending side between commercial, residential, and consumer. I'm in charge from an operational standpoint of those 30 employees. I set policies, procedures to make sure people are doing their job according to our policies, the law, as well as implementing new strategies for growing the business. How did I get into banking?
What made you wanna?
Yep. Right out of college, I graduated from UMass Lowell in 1999, and I immediately went to work for a financial consulting firm, selling mutual funds and annuities and things of that nature. I got all my Sears licenses in order to do this. Quickly found that commission life is not all it's cracked up to be. When you're 21 years old and you're talking to a 60-year-old about their finances, it's a difficult job. At that point, I decided to look into banking, and I went to work for Fleet Bank. And I was working for Fleet for a couple of years, and I had an opportunity to work for a small community bank called Flagship Bank in Worcester, and as a commercial lender. So I went there, and while I was there, they put me through additional school. I went to Nichols. I graduated in 2005 with my master's from Nichols, and in 2007 I came to Hometown, and now I'm actually wrapping up my another degree from the Wharton School of Business through the Stonia program at UPenn.
Going off numbers and you're just talking about budgets, in our class we talked about a couple different kinds. There's zero-based, rolling, and participatory. Does the bank use any one of those, or a combination, or
it's a combination of both zero and participation. We ask all of our managers to review what they have going on in their branch, as well as other managers in other departments, from what they need technology-wise, facility-wise, employment-wise. So we take all that information, and that's the participation part. And then we sit down around a table, myself, the CEO, and the CFO, we sit down at a table and we actually build the budget from scratch every year, looking at it in that fashion. Then what we do is we look at historicals. Being a bank, many of your expenses are flatlined or close to. It's the same expenses every year. There's nothing fancy in banking. So we do look at historicals and how we compare those historicals. But we start off from scratch every year.
Historically, as 5 years, 10 years, 1 year, how far?
We'll look at it depending on what it is. Sometimes we look at trending. For instance, with delinquency ratio, which is a big factor for banks, or non-accrual, which means a loan that's non-performing. We'll look at historicals and see how we're trending, because it doesn't change in large numbers on a monthly basis. As well as growth. We look at those things. But most of the other numbers, we're looking at it just from last year to this year as a comparison.
Some of the types of controlling activities your bank has as far as motivation or incentives for employees?
From a motivation standpoint, we motivate our employees financially. We found that to be the best way to motivate people. On an annual basis, we give all of our employees an annual bonus that's based upon multiple different factors, years of service, as well as bank performance, and their individual performance.
So achieving short-term as well as long-term goals, those are obviously challenging. So do you ever find yourself in a situation where making an unethical decision is tempting in a way?
Not at all. In banking, we are looked at by many different regulators, internal and external, and so we have to make sure that everything we do is always above board, and we make sure that our employees are held to a high ethical standard. On an annual basis, we make sure that every employee actually goes through and signs and reviews our ethics policy. It's hugely important in banking, especially with our reputation. We have to make sure that the population, our communities, believe and know that we are acting in their best interest.
Kind of going off of that, you talked about the ethics program and how all the employees have to sign it. Have external users ever found a mistake with the financial statements, either from on purpose or through an accident, through some sort of mistake?
In my time at the bank, I've never, it's never happened. We've had discrepancies in our financial statements that auditors found, and it happens quite often. I mean, it's human error, things of that nature. We just exited in a audit with the state for sales tax, and we found that in the last 3 years, we had to pay back $10,000 in state tax for sales tax for items that we purchased but never paid taxes on. But those are pretty standard things that they go through and they audit you on a regular basis.
What are some of the constraints that you might face when you're making it or operating?
There's many constraints in banks, financially, regulatorily, things of that nature that hurt your budgeting process and affect your budgeting process. For instance, the regulators may impose a new regulation 1 year that changes your entire operation and how you work and how you can actually process loans, for instance. There's a new regulation coming out because of our growth that we are going to be considered a large institution. Even though we're not very large, we're going to have to fall under these regulations. With that, there are certain limitations that we cannot exceed with respects to debt to income, what people can afford and can't afford in their mortgages. In many cases, when you're a small institution, you can look at certain situations and make exceptions to these rules. When you become a large institution, you cannot make exceptions anymore. Another constraint that it puts on lending practices would be the volume of loans you can do and the types of loans that you can get. We've had a tremendous amount of growth in the commercial industry over the last, say, 10 years, where it's really become our bread and butter for the bank, and that's how we make our money. But now we're at the point of our growth where 60% of our loan portfolio is commercial lending. Regulatorily wise, there's no statute that says you can't be above that, but the regulators look negatively on you if you exceed that. So it inhibits your growth, it inhibits your profitability, because now you're forced to look for other loans that are less profitable, which affects your budget because of your income stream.
So if you could give your 21-year-old self advice, what would it be?
Work for an institution that is going to invest in you for training. One thing I found that, in banking at least, that there aren't many banks out there that are training people. It's a very expensive thing to do. And many people have the misconception that if you train them, they're just going to go to another institution and look for more money. Some people are like that. Other people are more loyal and dedicated to their employer and will stick with them because of that training. But it's very important to get additional training when you get into the workforce. You can't find a school out there that's going to train people on how to be a banker. It just doesn't exist. So you have to get on-the-job training and other resources to do that afterwards. And finding an institution, finding an employer that's going to dedicate money, time, and resources into you is essential to your growth.
Well, thank you for letting us interview you today. We really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you guys for coming, and it was a pleasure.
Thank you.
We put that in.